would either scoot in, raise your hand. We have more than a full house here. This is fabulous. I can't tell you how great this is. It appears there might be an empty seat right here.
One right here.
Yeah, so if you guys want, if you don't mind sitting on your own, there's two over here on the end even, prime seats. That way if you decide to get bored with us, no, I'm just kidding, you won't be bored.
There's one right here also.
There's one up here, and there's some over here. So if anybody needs a seat, please just...
Colleen, you want to sit here?
Getting called out by name now. Perfect. All right. Well, thank you everybody for coming. I know Helen mentioned it at the end of John's speech, but we have the buckets. We always appreciate a drop in the bucket. That's how we keep our festivals free, of course. So we always appreciate that. But thank you so much for coming to our panel series. This is the first time we've ever done something like this. And Johnny and I were talking last fall, and everybody has questions for him and everybody else. Why are you here? How did you get here? Why did you pick Butte as your home? And I said, goodness, wouldn't that be neat to gather all of our citizens from Ireland and have a discussion at Laundry Rod? He said, yeah. So we asked Celine Maloney to come, Dolores Keane, and Father Patrick Beretta to join us as well. We kind of have guideline questions, but it's just going to be more of a casual conversation. So once again, thank you so much for coming. We greatly appreciate your presence. So, you guys ready? Yeah. Let's do this. And I'm Lindsay Mulcahy, by the way. I should throw that out there as well. I'm the one with the pseudo-Irish heritage. I just married into it. I'm going to claim it.
You're not you.
Yeah, there you go. All right. So first question, we're going to get really basic here. Will you all please tell us where you were born?
Thank you, Lindsay. I was born in County Armagh in the north of Ireland.
And I was born on Valentia Island. Excuse me. And Valentia is a small island off the southwest coast of Kerry. And we just call Ireland the mainland.
My name is Dolores Keane, and I was born and raised in Belfast, Ireland.
And my journey is a little different. My mom is from County Cavan in Ireland, and she moved to Paris, and she fell in love with the city of love with an Italian dude, and they had babies there. That's where I was born.
So, right off the bat, you can see everybody here came from a different place in Ireland, yet they all call Butte their home. So that's one of the most interesting things. So did anybody grow up different from where you were born? Everybody grew up where they were born? Father, did you grow up in France then?
Well, my Irish journey began very, very early on because it was a tradition in our family and a necessity for my mother to return to Ireland every summer, and sometimes every Easter. And so she took us with her every time. Sometimes my dad had to stay to work. And so I really grew up with my Irish cousins, with my Irish family, spent the entire summer there, sometimes from just finishing school till returning to school. And then after high school, then I began my true journey in Ireland with my first degree at the University of Maynooth in Ireland. So I was introduced to Ireland as a place that was sacred to my mother from infancy.
Thank you for sharing. While we're on the topic of growing up, do you guys have any stories you want to share of growing up in Ireland as children? Maybe something that you encountered here as well, or maybe something that's entirely different that kids do here that you perhaps did not do? Dolores has some thoughts.
Not really.
No?
For our summer holidays, this sound okay? We used to go to my grandparents' house, and they lived in North Kerry, which was the other end of the county, so it was a big journey to go off on our holidays to see them. And my grandfather was a lighthouse. He was a lighthouse keeper, and in North Kerry, the kids played hurley, and we had no tradition of hurley in South Kerry, so that was exciting. So I brought a hurley today for everyone to see. I'll just pass it around.
Because I'm older than the rest of the panel,
Try and beat 82.
But my mother came from a very, very rural part of Ireland, a little farm in County Cavan. And I have known an Ireland that has disappeared completely. And what I experienced at the very beginning of my life, until I was about 17 or 18, was an Ireland that was unchanged for about 300 years. You know, where at my mother's family farm, thatched roof, no running water, no electricity. Until I was 17, this is what I knew. And there was still no bathroom, and but there were lots of ditches which gave you a lot of privacy. So, and if you didn't mind cows looking, you were absolutely fine. There was a joke when I was young in County Cavan. There's this County Cavan farmer has a brother who immigrated to Boston. I have two cousins who immigrated from the farm to Boston also. And he goes to see his brother for 2 weeks, and he was amazed at how different everything was. And his brother said, "What is it that surprised you the most about America?" "Oh," I said, "it's just incredible here. You guys eat outside in a place called barbecue, and you answer the call of nature inside in a place called a restroom. That's it."
Living in Belfast was a great place, and we had lots of laughs. My mother used to take care of people that died, and as a little girl I would go with her and sit out in a sitting room. I happened to go in with her one day, and it was to Mr. and Mrs. Hayes. Mr. Hayes had died during the night, and I was very curious about what would happen. So I asked my mother if I could go in, and she said, "Yes, you have to be very respectful, and you speak when you're spoken to." So I got all that cleared away and went in, and Johnny, the neighbor's husband, was in the bed, very close to death, and he made a few sounds, not words, just trying to get a word out. And his wife turned around and she said, "Wish up, Johnny, and get on with your dying. No need to be talking."
Alrighty. Thank you for sharing those stories. I feel like with Father Beretta's, that's something relatable too. As Montana kids, you know, you get out there and there's always cows around. But that's all right. So relatable, even though we're thousands of miles apart. So my next question is, when and why did you leave Ireland? Oh. Who wants to start us off? Okay.
Well, I arrived here because in Ireland, I was unsure whether I should marry this boy, a young gentleman I was going with. So I thought I'd come over and visit my sister get my head on my shoulders, go back, and make my decision. Well, in the meantime, I happened to meet a gentleman, Jim K. Keane. And it changed the whole atmosphere. He was a few friends sitting here, no. He asked me out, and I refused. I told him I was going with someone in Ireland, and I didn't want to do anything to jeopardize anything. And he said, come on, get in the truck, let's go for a drive. So I looked at him, and Phil said, well, you know, what harm can you do? So I got in the truck, and we went uptown, and we stopped off at one of the pubs for a drink. I don't drink, so I, you know, he had a drink, and he kept talking, and he said, when are you going back? And I said, well, I only have 3 weeks, and then I'm going back. And I said, I'm really here on a mission to make a decision whether I should get married or not. And he said, well, I'll make it for you. Don't marry that guy and stay a little longer. Well, to make a long story short, that was in September, and we were married the 28th of December. Poor Anthony, I don't know what happened to him, but I hope he's all right.
Whirlwind romance. Oh, I love it. All right, Celine, would you like to share?
I was 24 years old, and I was working in Scull, which is a small village in West Cork down the Mizen Peninsula. And I was looking for more adventure than West Cork could give me. And so I bought a ticket, a one-way ticket for America, and came out. Didn't really know anybody in America at the time. I had one telephone number of somebody that I met briefly who lived in San Francisco. So it sounded like a good idea. And so when I got to New York, I thought, I better call that number in San Francisco. And so when I dialed up, and the operator said, this was like in '84, $5.25 in quarters, please. And I said, I got like, traveler's checks, and that's not going to work. So I just said, could you say collect call? Because I'd seen that on movies about America. It was a really nice operator, and so it came back to me a minute or two later. I'm sorry, they said, they think it's crank callers, and so they're not taking the call. So this was kind of problematic, at this stage. And could you just say I'm from Ireland, please? And so what do you know? Somebody picked up at the other end, and I said, I'm looking for Johnny. And not this Irish Johnny, but another Johnny. And the brother was Sean, I think. And he said, it's around Thanksgiving here. He hasn't been around for days. Oh, I said, well, I'm going to be in San Francisco airport in about 5 hours, and I don't know anybody. So I'd really appreciate if someone would, swing by and pick me up. Anyway, good to say it worked out.
Well done, Celine, and well done, Dolores. I arrived in America on Easter Monday in 1998, which was a pivotal time in Ireland, because it was the Monday after the Good Friday Agreement had been signed. And I lived along the border area there in Ireland, and it was a highly politicized area, highly politicized. And I'd be familiar with some of the things that John was talking about, and thank you for that, John. And one of the clauses of the Good Friday Agreement.
Lost it.
Is what? Is it One of the clauses of the Good Friday Agreement was that there was a stipulation for anyone who is aged between 17 and 25 who lived in the border region, who'd been involved or affected by the conflict in the north of Ireland, that they could get a visa to come to America. And the stipulation was I had to live in Massachusetts and not leave it. So I arrived in Boston at Logan Airport, and I remember the flight arrived at 3:17. And I says, boy, I'm off to a great start. And like Celine, I really only had one phone number, and I had $300. And I remember that very well because there were 3 $100 bills. And I remember checking my pockets, make sure one was here, and one was here, and one was here. And that's really all I had at the time, you know. And so the plane landed at 3:17, and by that evening I was working in a pub in Boston as a bus boy. And very little has changed since. Both in terms of my financial situation and the line of work that I have.
To give a little colour to where Johnny is from, Crossmaglen in South Armagh, I had, the president of my university in Ireland was a fellow by the name of Thomas O'Fiach, and he was from that part of Ireland, and he became Cardinal, Primate of Ireland, which is, the seat is in actually in Armagh. You know that the Primate of Ireland is not in Dublin, it's in Armagh, and this is important to know. And when, just to tell you what kind of background these people have, is that when Thomas O'Fiach, Cardinal O'Fiach, had a few of those, which was quite common, he always moved into revolutionary singing. And he would sing to us old revolutionary song from that part of the world. It was very touching. But a little background, why did I leave Ireland? There was, during the centuries of the oppressions of the Catholics in Ireland, the bishops were not allowed to train their priests in Ireland. It was strictly forbidden. And so the way they went around that is that they opened 3 colleges, one in Salamanca in Spain, one in Paris, which still exists as a cultural center, the Irish College in Paris, and one in Rome, the Irish College in Rome. And secretly, they would send priests there, they would be trained, and secretly they would coming back to minister to the people. So after I finished my first degree, I spent 4 years in Ireland, in Maynooth and outside. My bishop, a fellow by the name of Peter McKiernan, called me in and he said, Patrick, I look at your results and I'm looking at your background and I'm going to send you to the Irish College in Rome, which is an incredible place, incredible tradition. The heart of Daniel O'Connell is buried in the Irish College in Rome. And if you haven't seen it, you would be very, very proud of your heritage. It's a stunning building. It's kind of a mansion. I don't know how they were able to afford it. Our rooms were very bleak, but it looks very beautiful from the outside. And so when the bishop sent me to the Irish College in Rome, I went. I spent 6 years in Rome, and then I returned to begin my professional life as a teacher at different levels, higher education in Ireland.
All right. So next question, I'm gonna bundle 2 questions into one. How did you learn about Butte, and why did you move here?
Thank you, Lindsay. This is my favorite question of all. We did get the questions in advance. I knew I needed to be prepared, Father. You're better off the cuff than I am. But, you know, how did we hear about Butte? There was never a time in my life that I did not know about Butte. And I can't remember the day that I learned about it. It was that early. And I knew about Butte before I knew about Boston, New York or Chicago, and Butte was more frequently spoken of in my life than any of those places. So there's it felt that Butte was within touching distance. You know, Butte was always within touching distance, like it was an outlying parish of Ireland, almost like Valentia Island. No, but that it was truly the 5th province, the 33rd county. And I was trying to rack my brain as far back into my childhood as I could to answer this question. And I remember going to Mass on a Sunday, and the priest would pray for the repose of the soul of those who'd recently passed. And it would be frequently, it would come up at Mass, it would be pray for Patrick Harrington, who died in Butte, Montana, but originally from Cullabill in County Armagh. You know, or we pray for Mary McCarthy, who died in Butte, Montana last night, but was originally from Crossmaglen in County Armagh. So the wheels were kind of turning there a little bit, and as a child I wanted to be a priest, and I was just captive. A lot has changed since then too. I was just enthralled by the story of Our Lady of the Rockies. And we had a wonderful Christian brother, Brother Serenus, and he would have us, it felt like 4 times a year he would have us do a project on Our Lady of the Rockies. And that was no labour to me, because I was learning about this miracle that happened in Butte, America, which was known as the Ireland of the Rockies. So for a child it was very, very enchanting, you know, to hear about this. It was very, very enchanting. And the third channel through which I learned about Butte was living along the border area in the north of Ireland. It was no secret that the people of Butte had reached their hands across the Irish Sea to provide assistance to our community. And that was while other parts of Ireland turned a blind eye, and the Irish government was turning a blind eye. The people of Butte were wide awake, seeing what was going on, and they were providing help. And I'm very, very proud, and I'm very grateful for that help. So outside of that, how I ended up in Butte was, I worked all my life pretty much since I arrived in '98, and just worked almost every day, to be honest with you, and ended up with a little Irish pub group over in the state of Washington. And I was running a pub in Washington, and I'd recently been invited into an ownership capacity there in that little pub group. And COVID hits in 2020, and all of our pubs get shut down for 6 weeks. You know, so the writing was on the wall, there was going to be no work to be had for 6 weeks. So it was a bit of a, I could see the good in it, to be honest with you. You know, we didn't have to work. So my girlfriend at the time was in the same business, and she rolls out a map of America on our kitchen table. And she says to me, hey, you've got 6 weeks off, this is never ever ever going to happen again. Where do you want to go? And I says, we're going to Butte. So we came to Butte, and immediately there was a sense of familiarity. My first stop was Cavanagh County Celtic, where I bought this jersey on that first day. And I know we all miss Monica.
Yes.
And I went to the Finland Hotel where I was staying that night, and I called my partner in business, Sean, and I says, I know you're up to your eyes with this COVID nonsense, and I'm delighted to be part of the ownership group, and I said there was no conditions attached, but now there is. Says the next location has to be in Butte, Montana. So myself and the girlfriend at the time go back to Seattle, and she rolls out that map of America again, and she did a Sharpie, and she'd Sharpied over Malibu and Long Beach, Palm Springs, Manhattan. And honey, where do you want to go next week? I says, I'm going back to Butte. So I'm a single man these days.
Greatest love affair you've ever had, which may be one of the most romantic things
ever heard.
But as you mentioned, you're still a single man, and there could be a greater love affair out there.
Father's praying for that.
I'm doing more than praying. I'm recruiting.
All right. Dolores, you shared your story of how you ended up here. You were wooed by your husband in a whirlwind romance. So Celine, would you like to share how you ended up here? And how you first heard of Butte?
Well, I hate to say it, after Johnny's been so fabulous, but I did not choose Butte. However, Butte chose me. I was there in San Francisco having the time of my life, I have to put that in, and lived there for about 7 years, made some great friendships, lifelong friendships, and saw a lot of nice guys, but met one from Butte, Montana, and he said, "Oh, I'd really like to go out with you," and I said, "Oh, I'm kind of busy at the moment. Call me next week." Call me next week. "Oh, really like to go out with you. Oh, this is a bad week for me. I've got a lot of jobs at the moment. Could you call me next week?" So you call me next. It's my birthday. What can you do? It's his birthday. "Oh, that sounds good. Let's go out." So we went to the movies. I fell asleep at the movies. I said, "He's never going to ask me out again." Anyway, he did, and the rest is history. We came up to Butte for, that was like around January. We came up to Butte for St. Patrick's weekend. We flew in over the pit. And San Francisco is pretty geographically fabulous. We come in over the pit, and the pyramids of Butte, as I call them, those lovely steps, the distance. Anyway, we had such a fabulous weekend. Met all his cousins, his aunt and uncle, his lovely sisters, his brother, and I thought, God, his family is 5-star. He might just work out. Butte has just been fabulous for me, fabulous for my family. It's my home. I mean, I still do, of course, call my island home in Kerry home, but I have two. I have a big heart for lots of love, and I wouldn't trade Butte for the world.
So in the 90s, some of you know that I took a very extended, it was not my intention, but that's happened, very extended leave of absence. And I was 22 years in the restaurant business, and that's why Johnny and I have so much in common. But I really loved Montana. I was in the western part of the state, explored the Yak Valley and that part, and I did it extensively, and it was a wonderful experience. It was always my desire to return to the priesthood. And I said, I have to find a way to return to the priesthood. And when you're in business and you have your signature on paychecks, you have your signature on liquor licenses and leases, it's easier said than done, And so it took me a long time to be able to, one at a time, to sell our restaurants, to make my business partners happy, which was invariably difficult. And so when it was time to return to the priesthood, I said, I had two huge doubts. I said, I need to explore parts of this country that are more rural. And my first letter was sent to the Bishop of Helena, Bishop Thomas, a Butte kid. But I sent, in all honesty, also as Idaho and all that part of this part of the country. And one day, I was still in my restaurant. It was a packed Saturday night. The dining room was loud and full of life. And I get a phone call from an area code that I'd never seen before. 406, what is that? So I was intrigued. I walked outside in our patio to get some silence, and it was Bishop Thomas calling me. And he said, Patrick, I'm intrigued at the letter you sent me. And I'd like to meet you. I'm not making any promises, but I'd like to meet you. Could you meet me in Helena on the 16th of July? And that was 13 years ago. And I went there, I took my dogs, and I drove from where I lived in Southern Cal, and I arrived in Helena, and I met him. And I expected just a conversation, and he had this lunch prepared with 12 people who bombarded me with questions. And then there was, so you know that the screening of priest is incredibly thorough. And so he had me screened by all kinds of people, and as an example, there was an investigator who spoke to my employees, my neighbors, and my former business partners, just to kind of screen the kind of guy that I was. And I said, hold on now. My neighbors are going to think that I did something wrong. I did nothing wrong. I have a very good reputation. So, and he said, this is the way I'm going to present it. Are you okay with it? And he did it very skillfully, and I said, I'm totally fine with it. And so eventually, he said to me, I want you to be seen by one of our priests. He's in Butte, Father Haffey, and he's going to give me his opinion about you. And he said, I heard Butte, and I said, I had heard that name before. I had just seen a History Channel documentary on the old Butte and its strife and its rich history and its fascinating mining culture. And I said, that sounds like really interesting. And Father Haffey welcomed me very warmly as he is, and he took me to dinner at the cafe on Broadway. What was it? Broadway Cafe. So that's still Uptown Cafe. Uptown Cafe. We had a great dinner, and we really connected. And then when it came time to receive my assignment, he said to me, Patrick, I'm sending you to Butte at a parish called St. John's. And that was the beginning of my journey. A year later, Bishop Thomas said to me, he says, Patrick, I don't know how you do it, but you really, really get Butte. A lot of my priests struggled in getting Butte. You do not. You get Butte. And this is why Butte has been an immense blessing to me. The friendships, the admirations that I have developed for the people in this town, their culture, their souls, their hearts, is part of who I am. The emotional landscape of Butte was just absolutely comfortable for me from day one.
Thank you all for sharing me and learned about Butte, and I must say, Father, you are as well a blessing to Butte as much as Butte is a blessing to you. So when we kind of brainstormed some questions before we did this, and one of the topics we brought up was similarities between Butte and Ireland, and we talked about. Well, you know what? I'm not going to say what we talked about. I'm going to let you say what we talked about. I don't want to give anything away, especially because Celine has samples, not samples, but examples over there. I wish we had samples. It'd be like Costco, right? But yeah, could you share some similarities between Ireland and Butte? Did you want to get? That's what I gave you that one.
Thank you, Lindsay. I think one similarity that's striking is the use of language, how we use language in Butte. And I met Cheryl Ackerman from Butte Stuff on my very first trip to Butte. I was loading up on Butte souvenirs and developed a quick friendship with her. And in typical Butte fashion, we swapped phone numbers, and I'd only just got back to Seattle the next day, and like farther I see this 406 number calling, and I answer it, and who's that? It's Cheryl Ackerman. And what can I do for you? So I'm just calling to make sure you got home okay. They're just such loving people. But on my second visit to Butte a week later, without the girlfriend, but with my eyes open, I walked into the store and I says to Cheryl, how's she going? And she said, it's your second visit to Butte and you're trying to talk like us. And I felt a little twinge here because I didn't want the perception of trying to fake fit in with Butte people. And it took me a second, and she showed me the how she going tea towels that she has, and how she going keychains. And I said to her, well, that's something we grew up saying in Ireland, you know. So I've travelled a little bit in my life. That expression, how she going, I've only ever heard it in South Armagh and in Butte. So that's a great, great thing. And I was out with Jan Lowley. I'm sure you viewers know Jan. A couple of weeks ago we were at Maloney's, and she was telling me that she had cousins coming over from Ireland, and she puts a T at the end of the word cousin. She calls them cousins. And that's a very rural Irish thing to do. And Mitzi here finishes almost every sentence with God love you. And I love that. So when people say, why does Butte feel like home? It's because people like you, Mitzi, you know, you're used to language that's just been passed down. And I'm glad that we haven't lost that. So when you talk about the similarities, that's a big thing. And on a final note on this question, I'm so proud to say that I met Laurie Maloney on a Friday. On Saturday night, I was in her house having dinner. And in that house, there were St. Bridget's crosses, and there was Barry's tea, and she had a simple but unforgettable meal of beef stew, a hunk of white bread, and some Kerrygold Irish butter.
Would you like to, Dolores?
No, really.
No? Okay, so do you want this one?
So the similarities between Butte and Ireland. I think we all like family, and Butte is really very family driven, and like if you go anywhere else in the state and you're, you know, following your kids playing football or basketball or anything like that, it's like we're all from Butte and we're all together, and it's just not lined out by Maloney's and Murphy's and Ocellos or whatever. It's just we're all Butte together, and so I do love that about the town. Traditions. I mean, where in Montana can you get traditions like Butte? We're on our own. Look at our St. Patrick's Day, you know, tradition, our 4th of July tradition. I think that's very Irish. Proud for that. The tea drinking. Monica's shop and the Barry's tea. We all love to sit around and visit and have our chats over tea. Brought some tea bags for you. Barry's tea from County Cork. Pass them out. Take a tea bag.
So for me, the similarities are striking, but the highlights are the way we celebrate and the way we grieve. We celebrate in Ireland, County Cavan, which is the part of Ireland I know the best, and Butte in extraordinarily similar ways. There is a little bit of drinking, to be polite. There's lots of joy, there's lots of laughter, there's lots of interaction. We're extraordinarily social in Cavan and in Butte. We seek the company of each other constantly. We talk with each other constantly. And that's a very powerful comparison. But the way we grieve is even more meaningful to me. I have seen in both sides of the Atlantic tragedies, moments of unimaginable sadness and loss. And the way people around the grieving family react is exactly the same. I remember a few years ago, a young lady, a wonderful young lady, and she was killed very tragically in the eastern part of the state. And once I heard, I went to her family, and there was all these cars coming in, all these people who knew them, who loved them, who came at the same time as I did to embrace them, to be with them, brought them food, brought them comfort, just held them in their arms for a long time. You know, put their heads on their shoulder, just wipe their tears. It was so tender. It was so powerful. It was so healing to watch it. And over time, the grieving family felt the same type of inner peace. So much love shown. This solidarity in grief is spectacular. It helps people heal much, much faster. And the only two places, personally, where I've seen this is in Butte and in County Cavan or other parts of Ireland.
I just had something come to mind real fast. See, I'm not as fast as these guys around here. But I happen to be, we got a clip from our daughter who lives close to Patrick, Northern Ireland. I emigrated here, she's emigrated to over there and loves it. And I bring 3 grandsons there. But anyway, Lisa is very political, and she wanted to know everything about the election that was going on in Dublin, and went down there and was hanging around and asking and whatnot, and she wanted to go in, and very dogmatic, it's my right, and I have the clip, and the Guardia has his arm around her, and he's saying to the crowd, she's from Butte, Montana. She thinks she's going to tell me she can get in there to hear the results. And he has her close to her, you know, and she's got a face with cut steel. So anyway, she didn't hear anything. And that was it. But we were very grateful, you know, to get that clip. And it also, one of the policemen, Guardians, he put his arm out and he said, well, you know, you've all heard of Butte, Montana. That's where she's from.
It's one of the only examples I know of a Butte woman being defeated.
I love that. That was crazy. All right. Another thing we wanted to discuss was a discussion of the Ireland that you know, the Ireland that has been romanticized over time, has disappeared. And Father, would you like to speak on that? You kind of led that part when we had that little discussion.
There is a way to develop illusions about Irish life in terms of this place of bliss, this place of love, and this place of incredible cultural richness, and all of that is true. But the Irish suffered immensely. If any of you come to the Anri Ramas tomorrow, I'm going to address the way the Irish survived wounds and what happened after the years and the hundreds of years of oppression and famine and poverty. But the Irish, when I lived there in the 70s and the 80s, the economy was dreadful. The economy was dreadful. The unemployment was incredibly high. People in my family lived incredibly modest lives. My cousin, who is a little younger than me, went this year from County Cavan, the same parish as Marcus Daly, by the way. She went to the Canaries, and she went to, she's going next week to southern France, the French Riviera. That was unheard of in the 70s in the kind of class of people that my family is from. Maximum, you would spend a day in Dublin. That would be your big excitement for the year. And that has changed completely. People struggled. And you would see all these incredibly bright young people who couldn't get a job and broke the hearts of their parents and then left to find work in Britain, in the US, or in Australia. And that was sad. I can tell you, when you see your jewels of your community, your future leaving in huge numbers, that was very painful to watch. So I think that we have to balance our vision of Ireland that was filled with affection, of course, and admiration, with a sense of reality. It was not always easy living there until fairly recently.
Thank you, Lindsay. I'll touch on that, and thank you, Father. Growing up in the 70s and the 80s and early 90s, the perception of Ireland was much different, you know, from outside of Ireland. And Butte may have been strongly endeared, I acknowledge that. But there was a long time when there was nothing sexy or romantic about Ireland. You know, there was a long time, and there was a time in the early 80s when Guinness, which claims to be an Irish brand, almost rebranded as an English beer. And this isn't an urban legend, this is the truth. Because they wanted to distance themselves from the conflict that was arising in Ireland. And they seen it as a dirty, mucky thing that they did not want to be associated with. So they were on the verge of being an English beer. So, nothing against them really, but a little bit against them. But such was the fear of touching Ireland, particularly the north of Ireland. Such was the fear, you know, let's brush that part under the carpet. But along comes, they do say it's a defining moment. The Quiet Man helped, of course, way back, but a big defining moment was Riverdance in 1998, you know, and the Eurovision, and Riverdance took off like a rocket. And now you've got the peace agreement in the northern part of Ireland, and now you've got the Celtic Tiger, and now you have these Irish pubs just popping up across the world. And they're not Irish taverns anymore, they're nice Irish restaurants where you can go to eat. And so I think the perception from the outside has changed a lot. You know, folks hold Ireland in a higher esteem now, and companies invest in Ireland the way they didn't used to. You know, you've got Apple and Pfizer and Intel, and these massive American companies, and Apple, you know, due to tax breaks, of course, helps. But Ireland is a desirable place to open up shop. And it hadn't been, you know, for so long. It hadn't been. So it seems its esteem has risen a little.
So when you think about Ireland and you think about that nostalgia, I have to say I grew up in it. It was fabulous on the island. I mean, long summer days, running to school through the fields, playing with the kids out back. Really, the rest of the world didn't affect us, and it was just glorious. I often hear Steve talking about his West Side gang when he was running around with the Denny's and the Patchers, and they had the time of their lives finding dead men in alleys, I might add.
We didn't kill him.
He says he didn't kill him. One wonders. But I think we were both blessed with that. Him in Butte, Montana, and I mean, lifelong friendships he made with those guys, and me on that small island off the west coast of Ireland. It was a fantastic youth. And I still am friends with those people that I ran around with in national school. So, you know, he's his friends here, I still have my friends there, we kept the contacts up. How lucky were we? So I did bring a picture picture of the island, and it is taken on a day like today, which would be like the middle of August when the Mombrisha are in bloom, and it's a beautiful sunny summer's day. I'm going to pass it around.
Well, thank you to Celine for bringing the show and tell. She's really added, and she has more on the table over here on the east side of the building. If you guys are interested when this is over, to come check it out. Perhaps ask more questions of her. But this ends our discussion. Thank you so much for being here. And I want to say, oh, we got a quick question.
I do. Is it okay if I ask Dolores a question?
Yeah.
Dolores, do you have any stories you'd like to share about being in Belfast during the Troubles?
Yes, I can.
Yes, absolutely. So, real quick.
So you want to know what it was like?
Hey, Dolores, I'm gonna repeat the question to make sure everybody heard it. The question was, Dolores, would you like to share some stories of living in Belfast during the Troubles? Okay, thanks.
Yes, I do have some. And what was very heartbreaking to me when it happened several times when I was introduced to people. It was always, well, this is Dolores Keane. She comes from Ireland, and then they'd ask, what part of Ireland? And I'd say Belfast. And they'd say, well, not really. You know, and I can't count on my two hands how many times I was shot down like that. And, you know, that it wasn't considered really part of Ireland. We did fight to be, and you know, ever since I was a small child, my mother always used to say, we'd say Northern Ireland, my mother would say, stop saying that, Ireland. So that was a way of saying, thank you, I appreciate that. That was a way for us to, you know, get a little bit of oomph and then go out, and if we came across that again, we would say, no, you know, we are from Ireland. This is our home too.
A brief conclusion, maybe Celine and Johnny can say something briefly in conclusion, but I went for the first time in my life, I went to Scandinavia during what they call the White Nights, or the Midnight Sun in the far north, where the sun really doesn't set much. And on my way there, I was at Schiphol, which is the big Amsterdam International Airport, and it was a little tight because of leaving late from Salt Lake. It was a little tight in the correspondence, and I arrived, and you arrive your first stop in Europe, you have your passport checked, and there was a line of Americans that you. And I said to the guy, I said, how long the wait? And he said, about an hour and 40 minutes. And I said, and I see to the side other passports, and I said, that's where my Irish passport comes to the rescue. 17 seconds. And then I walked through the streets of Reykjavik during the famous White Nights, and it's a charming, charming town, and you see all these Scandinavian stores and restaurants, and then suddenly I see this in the distance, this bright green spot on the side of the street, and I get closer as I need to investigate this thing, and it was an Irish pub by the name of the Drunken Rabbit, and it was packed. Exactly.
Thank you, Lindsay, and thanks for a wonderful panel. Great to be with you guys, and thanks everybody for coming. And
Yes, thank you for coming, everyone.
Fantastic turnout, and we talked earlier about the differences. We didn't talk much about that, but the differences between, you know, Butte and Ireland. And one big difference that struck me really fast And I don't feel deprived in any way, but in our house growing up, we never said I love you. You know, and once again, I want to underline, I don't feel deprived by that. I don't think it affected me in a bad way. But I think those 19 years in Ireland, I don't think I ever heard anyone say I love you to each other. It was just not a place that we went verbally with people. I think we showed it in other ways, but I never ever heard someone say, hey, I love you. And my first girlfriend in America, I was a busboy, and she was a professor of Irish Studies at Boston College. And she was often upset with me, and she'd say, man, you Irish, you're just emotionally constipated. And she would try very hard in a futile way to get me to talk about my feelings. But you know, I came to Butte, and Laurie said, leaving the house, you know we love you. And Monica, we love you. We love you. People are very quick to say I love you here. So Butte, we love you too.
Of all of you, that we all love you, and we are so thankful that you came here today. You're such a blessing to our community. So thank you to Johnny, Celine, Dolores, and Father Beretta.